Too often, God will lay a dream or a desire on our heart, and we won't follow it. We don't take the action to do what He has encouraged us to do. In this episode, we're going to explore the purpose of the possibilities and the ideas that God gives us and see how we can trust Him when He gives those nudges, whether it's changing careers, the decision to retire, or maybe it's just the decision to take that trip you've always dreamed about. Today, my guest, Amanda Hietter, is going to share her story and examples of how she took the leap and went where God led her, even when it didn't make sense. Her story will encourage and inspire you to answer God's call to more. Be sure to stick around until the end, where I am going to share some insights from a different view and some scripture to help you see where God might be speaking to you in this season of your life. Do you fear what lies beyond retirement? What if it's a gateway to a life filled with purpose, meaning, and adventure rather than an end? Discover peace and fulfillment as you boldly enter this new chapter in Courageous Retirement, a Christian podcast. I'm your host, author and coach, Vona Johnson. Let's get started. Amanda, I am so blessed to have you here with me today. We met at a C-Suite for Christ convention a little over a month ago, and I just love what you are doing. I think what really connected was the travel aspect of what you're doing. But your story is so much bigger than that. As I mentioned before we started, we're tying these conversations into my book, A Different View. We're going to tie this conversation into the chapter that talks about the purpose of possibilities and the dreams that God lays on our hearts. And I just feel that you have stepped into that answering God to more, that when you had that longing in your soul and you said, "Are you sure, Lord?"
Right.
Tell us a little bit about yourself first, and then we'll launch into this transition that you have gone through and are going through.
Thank you, Vonna, for having me on your podcast. I am truly grateful and excited to share with your audience a little bit about some of the things that God has done and is currently doing and will be doing in my life. A little bit about me. I have been a luxury travel advisor for about 4.5 years now. The first 3.5 years, I was working a full time job and running a business, and God called me into letting go of my job, working in the energy world as a paralegal, and saying, "Hey, it's time for you to let go and fully trust in me and jump into being a full time entrepreneur." And I tell you what, He gave me lots and lots of signs, and I was like, I don't know about this, God. When you listen to Him, that's when the blessings fully come through. So, I've been doing this now for a year and 3 months full time. I cannot believe it. And I'm truly grateful because I've been able to do so many things I would not have been able to do if I was working a full time job. I am a mom of two. I started taking them on trips with becoming a travel advisor. That was the big thing for me of jumping into this industry. I wanted to show my kids the world. They always say not leaving the United States is like reading one page of a book and not reading the full book. I want my kids to see the world, see different cultures, try different foods, experience new things. It gave my daughter that love of travel. Now she's literally traveling the world, a flight attendant. And then my son, he's 17, going to be a senior this year. I don't know how time flies so quickly, but it did. And so we are doing the college visits right now. And I'm going to be an empty nester in about a year, which is crazy to think, but it's coming.
Oh, I love that. My husband tells that when our son went to college, I cried for about 10 minutes and then it was like, "Hey, this is kind of nice." Enjoy the last and then realize that the best is yet to come, because when they grow up and come back, you just enjoy that adult life together. I've always thought that each stage was better than the last. I always thought, "Oh, I have to cling to this because this is so good." And then I
Mhm.
realized, like so many things in life, God has in store for us even better.
Yes, you are so right. I remember when my daughter went off to college and I was like, this is not for me. When she left, though, that first year, I almost felt like there was a death in the family. Nobody go into her room and don't touch her things. And I would cry anytime I would think about her. Now, mind you, I had her at the age of 18. So I
Well,
was a baby having a baby. And so I
good.
haven't really known life without her. That was a huge transition for me with her going off to college. But I think it'll be a little bit easier this time with my second one due to I've already went through this one time. So
Sure, sure. And look how good she turned out. So in a way, you retired even though you didn't start collecting a pension and all of that, right?
mhm,
But you stepped into something completely different. You had been building up to it, but
yeah.
that letting go can be really hard to do. And you hit on
Mhm.
it a little while ago, and I think it's an important thing to land on for a minute. And that's when God starts giving us those nudges. When we're like, "No, no, I can't, I can't." And
Yeah.
he can
Yeah.
be persistent, can't he?
Yes, he can. For sure.
Right, right. For me, this journey is very similar. In fact, I just retired for the second time this
Wow.
week. Shortly after my retirement, I became a city commissioner in our community. This week was my last official responsibility on the commission. I have now stepped away from that and I'm answering the next call to more and to just really
Wow.
step into it. But there's an identity we have. We wrap up in the pay, the status, all the things. Did you feel some of that when you stepped into your entrepreneurial journey? Did you feel some of that? Oh my gosh, who am I and why did I think I could do this?
Yes, there was definitely a lot of imposter syndrome with being I don't want to say that I'm young, but I do still feel young. I was 39 years old and I was like, "Oh, this is crazy." A lot of people thought I was crazy. My family was like, "You're leaving this job that is paying your bills. It's a great job. You have great benefits. Being a paralegal working for attorneys, there is always consistent income. You never have to worry about work." I hadn't really built up the clientele where there was a steady flow of income. And so my family thought I was crazy at the time. So it was definitely a scary thing to go, okay, I have this steady flow of income that's coming in every single week. It covers all of my bills for my home plus more to stepping into this. Okay, God, I have to fully trust in you and I have to trust that you're going to provide for me every single day. And honestly, it is something that I still continue to have to step into because to be very transparent, right now, my personal checking account is negative. My business checking account has $23 in it right now, and I have rent that's due and I have bills that are due. But what is so crazy is I still have this inner peace that God's going to provide because He
Mm,
constantly reminds me of how many times He's provided for me in the past. I've never been without a home to live in. I've never been without food. I've never been without a vehicle to drive, without clothes on my back, without my basic necessities. I always think about how much I love my children and how I always provide for them whenever they need things, and how much more does he love us as his children that he will provide. I literally have this sticky note sitting on my desk that says trusting God to provide miracles. And I look at that and go, okay, God, I'm trusting in you. I put that there for the days where I have doubt of
yeah.
I'm stepping into this, God, and I have to step into it each day of okay, God, I'm trusting in you. I'm trusting that you have something big in store for me for the day. And I'm going to put a smile on my face and show love to every person I meet. And God, you are going to provide.
Oh, that is so beautiful. And if I can just push a pause right there and speak to the audience, because as we're talking courageous retirement, my primary audience is someone who has worked their career and has a pension. That doesn't mean that there isn't still fear. I took early retirement literally within months of when I was eligible to, which took a
Hmm.
substantial hit to my pay. But I had to keep reminding myself that God had provided everything. The courage you've demonstrated in just telling this story, much less living this story, is huge because not only did I have my retirement income, but I still had my husband providing for me. What I want the audience to hear is that it's still scary. I don't want to minimize the fact that we have this idea built up in our head that God has provided us with all of these resources for life and we cling to them like the monkey reaching his hand into the jar grabbing as much as he can and then he can't get his hand out because it's too full.
Uh-huh.
And sometimes I think that that's the way we are and it's like, oh, God has blessed me so much, And he's like, just let go. I've got something better right over there. But unless you let go and trust me, you're just going to stay where you are. And sometimes that means staying somewhere where we're not happy, or we're not, maybe we're fine with our job, but we know that there's more on the other side. We have
Mhm.
to step in and trust him. So bravo to you for having the courage to do that and for trusting him. That's huge. Thanks again for sharing the story, because I think it will inspire some of the listeners to realize that they don't have to walk the path that you are walking right now, because they do have a pension and they should answer that call. So
Yeah.
awesome. You did this. And
Mhm.
honestly, I have thought many times myself, because I was taking the leap and becoming a health coach. I was going to help people solve all of their health problems. I was still clinging to baggage that was holding me back from really stepping into my calling, I think. And I've done the books, the podcast. I have stepped into what I believe are the courageous things that God has asked me to. Have I not hidden at times and not stepped out at times? Sure. But that's the beauty of it, is he is a God of redemption, and he just keeps helping us take the next step and the next step, and he's always there. So let's talk about this exciting world that you stepped into, luxury travel. Oh, that sounds really awesome. You really struck it home for me when you talked about the people who never travel outside of the United States.
Mhm.
Let's talk a little bit about how we can travel and be safe in our travels, because I think that that's a real concern. So tell us about that.
For sure. I recommend, especially if you're traveling outside of the United States, to partner with a travel advisor, because they are going to be that concierge service for you when things go wrong. If you book through something like Expedia or through your credit card company, you're calling an 800 number and you're getting a different person every time. And honestly, they don't know you the way the travel advisor knows you. What's great is when you work with a travel advisor, especially with my agency, is we have different things in place where we help you prepare for traveling. We will send you a packing list so you know all the things to pack, so you feel like you are set and you're not worrying about, oh my gosh, if I go to this resort and I forget my sunscreen, it's going to cost me $35 for some sunscreen. I send that packing list to my clients. I also have a cool document, the pre, during, and post travel document that prepares my clients for traveling. For instance, having somebody watch over your home if you're going to be gone for a week, change the lights being on so it looks like someone is still home, or stopping your mail so that you don't have a bunch of mail sticking out of your mailbox and someone thinks, oh, they must not be home. Let me go rob their house. Now, when you're traveling, I send a really cool walkthrough of exactly what to expect when you're walking into the airport. Here's where you go, and here's where you need to end up. And that really helps my clients feel prepared, because anytime I go into a new international airport, it can be a little bit scary if you don't know what's next. Some airports require you to go through both immigration and customs, and that's not a typical thing here in the United States. So when you're like, wait a second, why do I have to push my luggage through this thing that they're scanning? People might freak out. So I walk everyone through that. Other tips that I always have, and people laugh at this, is just be smart when you're traveling. I live in the St. Louis area, and it's considered one of the most dangerous cities in the United States. I would not go walking around downtown St. Louis at 2 a.m. after having 4 or 5 beverages, trying to walk to my car on my own. So it's very similar to that. Don't just be wandering around randomly in a place where you know it's not safe. Make sure you have someone with you. You always have me as a backup, or whatever travel advisor you're working with if something happens, and just be smart. Honestly, a lot of people don't realize this, but the United States is actually on a do not travel list for a lot of countries because of the violence that we have going on here currently.
Oh,
And
I
so a
did
lot of
not know that.
that. Yes, there are many countries where you should not travel to the United States because there's shootings and racism. So they actually say, don't come here. And so it's the same thing. I always ignore those travel warnings of don't travel here, don't travel there, because I do not want to have a fear of traveling somewhere new. I just am smart about when I'm traveling. I make sure that anything I'm doing during the day, I stay on resort on property. In the evenings, don't just wander around by yourself. And that's really all it takes. It's so simple.
Yeah. That's very helpful. It makes total sense to me.
Mhm.
And it actually even opens up for me kind of that there are places right here at home that are probably more dangerous to go to than some of the places that I would love to go.
You are right.
That's really helpful to understand. And I love that you put together those lists and help prepare people because sometimes just taking away the unknown helps us step away from the fear. We're never going to be able to completely step away from the unknown because there's always going to be things we don't know. And then that's when we come back to, okay, God, I'm turning this over to you. I trust you, right?
Right.
Right, right. You're inspiring me. It's like, okay, because we first met. I mean, you're not just a travel advisor. You do way more than advise individuals or couples on travel. You are actually helping people create retreats and getaways for businesses or for coaches. I think that's really an exciting thing. In fact, what came up for me as you were talking is if there are people listening to this conversation and they're like, "Oh, I think this would be really awesome." I want you to reach out. If you just want to do it on your own and work with Amanda, that's wonderful. But if you're thinking, I'd like to get together with some other courageous retirement listeners and do a retreat, let me know because, part of me has been like, oh, I can't do that. That's outside my comfort zone. And you're inspiring me to say, if there are people wanting to learn more about that opportunity, reach out and let's have that conversation. That would be so fun.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Retreats are honestly way easier than what people think because if you're someone like yourself and you're wanting to host an event, a retreat is usually small, like
Right.
10 to 15 attendees. It's more intimate. It's really not that complicated, especially when you partner with a travel advisor that has that experience that's going to handle all of the travel logistics from finding the accommodations to booking the flights to getting a visa if you're going to Europe or whatever country requires that. All of those things are handled by them, and you're just focusing on providing the content and being your present self. That's really all that it takes. It's not as difficult as people think it might be. So I
Yeah.
love planning retreats because transformational experiences happen, community is built, there are friendships that are created that are lifelong because you're getting to experience something new together. I always love incorporating a little push you outside your comfort zone type experiences with my retreat leaders because then it's something you can bond over, especially after the excursion is finished that evening and even into the next year or beyond. It's something that you can bond over, and that genuinely is so valuable.
Yeah. No, I just love that whole idea. Our conversation, as I mentioned, is revolving around the chapter called The Purpose of Possibilities. Like you've just planted seeds of possibilities, not just for me and Courageous Retirement, but for people who have had that sense of there's something missing. I want something more. I want to go see the world or whatever. I'm just really hopeful that there's someone that's listening that's like, yeah, this was one more nudge that God has given us. Because isn't that what I mean, truly, when he wants us to do something, he'll just give us that one more sign from,
Mhm.
sometimes it's in scripture, sometimes it's a conversation with a friend, sometimes it's a podcast. But it's like, oh, yeah, you've mentioned that a couple of times now, God. Maybe this is where you want me to go today.
I would actually, if you were okay with it, share a little bit about the nudges that I got from God, because I know when I was in that space, if I would have had someone say, this is what I experienced before letting go of my job, then I would have been like, hey, these are definitely from God. Because I was like, am I imagining these things or is this God? And because I was still very leery, I had never fully stepped into being an entrepreneur like this before.
Right.
And it was scary, to be very honest, especially being a single mom of two children and having to provide for them. So, some of the things that I experienced during the nudges is I would read a Bible verse and it would hit me in a way it never had hit me before of God encouraging me to step away. I would see things on social media. Someone would post something, and the way I took it was God was telling me, step outside your comfort zone, let go. And then that happened about 100 times. drip funneling me like, okay, man. And I'm like, I don't know. I kept saying, God, I would pray every day, Lord, I want to leave this job, but I need a big sign. So the cherry on top was I was at my job and lived 45 minutes away from the office, and it would take about an hour to get in. So anybody that knows the St. Louis area, if you live in the outskirts, as you get closer to the city and lives near a big city, the traffic gets pretty horrendous. I had taken this job because I was able to be at home 4 days a week, build my business, work a job, be with my kids, and only be in the office 1 day a week. They had changed what the requirements were to work for the company, that I had to be in the office 3 days a week and work from home 2 days a week. My first inkling was, I can't do this. There's no way. I don't want to be driving an hour and a half each way. That's a waste of my time. Then that's less time growing this business that God has called me to. I'm away from my kids. My son wasn't driving at the time. I'm like, who's going to get him to and from soccer practice and all the things he needs to do? I was freaking out during this time. Oh, what am I going to do? That was one of the big signs. Is God was saying, look, this is what they're transitioning to. You know, you don't want to do this. You know that you're called to more.
Right.
And then when I was at work, I was sitting in a cubicle and there was not enough offices for all of us. So I had to go to another area of the corporate office. This lady walked past me. She was a fellow paralegal that I worked with. And she stopped at my desk and she's like, why are you sitting over here? And I said, oh, there's not enough office in the legal department. She was like, okay, I can tell something's off with you. I said, I want to be transparent. God is nudging me into something that I'm a little bit fearful of. He's been showing me signs. And she just put her hand down on my desk and said, Amanda, if God is continuing to show these signs, you already know what to do. You need to listen to him and do what he's telling you to do. I just stopped and went, he just used somebody in my office to tell me to let go of my job? I was like, all right, Lord. I went home that evening, drafted my 2 weeks notice email. It was one of the most scary things I could have ever done because I was like, okay, God, I don't have any money to pay my bills. How is this going to work? And you know what? I look back at that and I'm so beyond grateful because I'm living this life that I had been praying for so long. Freedom of time. That is the big thing. Freedom of time for me to be able to travel when and where I want, for me to be available for my kids whenever I need or want to. With my daughter living in Denver and me being here in St. Louis, because she's a flight attendant. Sometimes her schedule allows her to come home for 3 days and she'll text me, hey, mom, I'm coming home for 3 days. If I was working a full time job, I would not be able to just stop whatever I'm doing, move my appointments because I run my own business. I would have to work a 9 to 5 and miss out on that valuable time with my daughter. It's very, very limited because of her schedule. And that is the big thing for me. I finally have that freedom of time that I've been praying for years. And I'm so grateful. Yes, it is still scary. Yes, I still don't have the finances the way I want to, but I am blessed because I have that freedom of time I have been praying for so many years. And God will provide for my finances. I put that in his hands.
I have chills because that's just how he works. The other thing that's coming up for me is this: we have this misperception of what we need.
Mm-hmm.
And he will show us that. What kept coming up for me is I was trying so hard to be successful and do all these things. And I was so focused on the money that even though I was talking about faith and encouraging people in faith and writing, I hadn't really stepped in and hadn't really believed in what it could be like to just totally surrender to him. He kept giving me this message. It's not about the money. I have provided everything you need, and I always will.
Yes.
And there's so much power in that. I'm at this place where I have parents that are aging and dementia, and I'm the primary person for my dad. I have grandkids in town that I'm the backup for when mom's not able to run them to practice or lessons or just stay home with them when they're sick sometimes. It's funny because I did several hours of coaching and I was really hesitant to do this because I knew they were going to tell me that I needed to set these goals and go after all these things. And I have been resisting. I've been telling people, it's like, hey, what are your goals this year? I'm not setting goals anymore. I'm just taking each day as God brings me to it and praying and asking him where he wants me to go. Not that goals are bad. It's a thing that I've just needed to become at rest with. I was hesitant to do this because I was afraid they were going to push me. And it wasn't that way at all. It was just like, yes, lean in, trust him, and embrace this life that he has given you and that freedom, because that's what he wants. He wants us to live in the freedom. We're in different places in life, but such a similar message.
Yeah.
That's really awesome.
Honestly, freedom of time is really where it's at. And I think a lot of people think it's always money.
Right.
But I don't really think that that's what it is, because everyone wants to be able to take a vacation whenever they want. Everybody wants to be able to be with their children or grandchildren when they are needed or when they want to. Be able to say, hey, I'm not feeling 100% today. I can easily just take the day away and not stress or worry. So the freedom of time is really where it's at. And I have come to love that more than money. And I can't believe I'm saying this out loud because I've never said this. So this is the first time you're hearing that. That is really what I love.
Yes.
And learning how to free up my schedule to be with my kids and family. This is my first summer that I really have been able to spend time with my family, because both of my sisters and my brother-in-law work in the school system. Just over the last 4 or 5 years that I've lived here in the St. Louis area, being close to them in the summertime, they text randomly in the morning, hey, we're going to go to the zoo, or hey, we're going to go swimming. And I would always say, oh, must be nice. I have to work a job. And this year I can say, hey, I'm going to clear my schedule. I'm coming along. And that's what it's all about, honestly, is being with family, that freedom of time to be with your family, be with your loved ones. And I'm getting to experience that. And I'm blessed beyond all measure.
And I think as Christians, sometimes we get this perception that we need to shift our identity from working for our boss. And now I need to be posting and I need to be doing this and I need to be doing that because I need to let everybody know about Jesus. And we forget that just being at peace and having that freedom and living that trust that we have is so much more of a testimony than telling, right?
Actions are stronger than words, right?
So beautiful. I'm so grateful that we connected, that we're having this conversation. I'm excited to share it with our listeners and our watchers because it's both audio and video. If you were to leave the listeners today with just one last thought, what would your word of advice be?
Don't be afraid. Just take the leap. Trust in God. He's going to provide.
Amen. How can people find you? Let's say they're like, oh my gosh, I love Amanda. I want to learn more about travel. I want to have her help me reach my dreams. How can they get a hold of you? Where can they find you?
So all of my socials, except for my personal Facebook page, it's Across the Horizon Travel. My personal Facebook, Amanda Hietter, Hietter. It's a German last name. I have TikTok, Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook. I even have a YouTube channel that I'm kind of dabbling with. I'm in the process of starting my own podcast. It'll be called Heat Up Your Retreats with Amanda Hietter.
Oh, I love it. Let me know when that gets off the ground.
For sure.
And
Yes.
I've done some training. If I can help in any way or point you to my coach that's really been helpful in this whole YouTube podcast thing, I would love to help you with that.
Vona.
Absolutely. So, anyway, thank you, Amanda. This has been such a joy. I appreciate your taking the time and your vulnerability, honesty, and enthusiasm for answering God's call to more in your life. Once we get it, the peace that comes from, what did he say to Peter 3 times? Follow me. When we do that, the fulfillment and the peace we get is beyond any imagination.
Amen to that.
Thank you. I pray that God blesses you with the resources that you need to pay that rent this month. As promised earlier, I want to share with you a snippet out of the chapter of The Purpose of Possibilities from a Different View. When we can create that shift in our thinking and give ourselves permission to trust God and courageously go after the dreams that He's laid on our hearts, everything changes. Sometimes it requires a change in perspective and the ability to find the good in every situation. Other times we must let go of our concern about what others will think or want and go after our deepest longings. It truly is less about what we are doing and more about who we are being. Once we let go of the things of this world that weigh us down and hold us back, we can start living the life that our soul longs for. I pray that you too will start living the life that your soul longs for. It is so freeing. We talked about the courage and the faith that we need to do that sometimes, and the scripture that goes along with that is Hebrews 11:1. What is faith? It is the confident assurance that what we hope for is going to happen. It is evidence of things we cannot see. Folks, there are times when we just have to take the step, even when it doesn't make sense. I just want to thank you so much for stopping by today. It really has been a joy to share Amanda's story with you. I pray that you will think about where God is nudging you and how many different times has He given you His nudge, His perspective, His insights on where you might be going or what you might be missing out on if you don't ever get the courage to step into your more. So again, thanks for stopping by. I pray that you will engage your faith, finish well, and always, always live your more in your courageous retirement. God bless.